Welcome back, everyone, and in today's music theory video lesson, we're going to look at examples of identifying voice leading. All right, so now if we look at this one, V1, we notice that V1 has a bunch of different notes, but the thing that I really want to think about is that V2 has one static note. And so here, I'm just going to immediately run to the conclusion that this is not parallel, it's not similar, it's not contrary, that the only answer can be oblique. And this really is a good lesson to be learned, which is to say, choose your voices wisely. I don't have to start my analysis from V1. Here, I started my analysis from V2 because simply it was easier. And if I would have done my analysis from V1, I would have arrived at the same conclusion, but it would have just been twice the amount of work because I'm sitting here going, whole steps and half steps and ups and downs and all that. And here I just go, static, done. All right, so let's look at the next example here. We've got V1 and V2. And again, I'm trying to determine parallel, similar, contrary, or oblique. And when I think about this, I recognize that I don't have a single note that is reoccurring over and over again. So immediately we can eliminate the oblique option. Now, the next thing that I really want to do from here is I want to start considering what directions these notes are going. And because we're not using standard notation, that definitely means that we have to make some assumptions. But these assumptions aren't going to be drastic assumptions. And so G to B, we're going to say we're going up. This is going to be going down, up, and down. Now, when I look at here at voice 2, we're going to do the same thing. And I can see that this is going up, down, up, and down. And I see that these are both going up. They're both going down. They're both going up. They're both going up. And they're both going down. That tells me they're going the same direction. And that means we're going to eliminate the contrary option. So now we have to choose between parallel and similar here. To do that, we're going to think about doing this in two different ways. And there's a couple of ways to do it. So the first way is we can consider intervals. And the other way that we can do it is thinking about the individual half steps and whole steps and whatnot that occurs. So let's start with the half steps and whole steps method. And so if I think about that, let's see. So G to B is going to be 4 half steps, and then 2 half steps, 4 half steps, 3 half steps, and 2 half steps. Okay. And so this is basically saying that G to B is 4 half steps up, B to A is 2 half steps down, so on and so forth. Now let's look over here, and we're going to have 4 half steps, 2 half steps, 2 half steps, 3 half steps, and 2 half steps. All right, and let's go ahead and take a look at what this would be like intervallically. Well, G to D is going to be a perfect fifth. B to F sharp is a perfect fifth. Perfect fifth. And if you stopped here, if you were using this method, so this right here is sort of like method 1, and then up here, using these intervals, these are like method 2. And if I started here with this method 1, and if I go, perfect fifth, perfect fifth, perfect fifth, and I go, this must be all perfect fifths all the way, that'd be absolutely incorrect, because here it goes perfect fourth, and perfect fourth. So the idea is don't be lazy, go through the work, do the whole thing, be thorough. Even if you think it is going to be something, it may turn out to be different. Okay, and so just by this kind of idea here, I can see that the intervals are changing. That should tell me that this is really not going to be parallel. And so this is going to be similar. All right, so we're going to really consider this similar. Now, on the other hand, if I look over here with these intervals, I can see that, well, let's see, we've got 4 halves matches with 4 halves. We have 2 halves matches with 2 halves. 2 halves, so this one up here is different from this one. But then after that, we get back to 3 halves and 3 halves, 2 halves and 2 halves. And so this really is the same kind of supporting sort of corroborating evidence, right? We have the idea that all these intervals are matching except for one. That should tell us that we're looking at this from similar perspectives. Now, the next thing I want to think about is the idea of the instantaneous motion. And we want to think about the average motion. Okay, so the instantaneous motion versus the average motion. So if I were to look at this whole thing like this, what I'm really considering is the average motion. I'm really looking at just the average motion. How does this thing move averagely, right? And if I were to do that, that is going to really lead me to similar. That's what we just did. However, if I thought about the instantaneous motion, I might come up with a different story, because if I think about the instantaneous motion, I might go, well, let's see, what if I did only this area right here, like this voice? And if I did that from V1 to V2, I would recognize, well, that's parallel. And if I looked at the next one, Well, that's also parallel. And then if I looked at the next one, and that's similar. And so you might go, well, what's the voice, what are the voices doing here? And you can go, well, instantaneously it's going parallel, then similar, then, after that it's going parallel again, and then it's going parallel again. And how do we know it continues to do that? Well, because it went, perfect fifth to perfect fifth to perfect fifth, then went perfect fourth. And so there was a change here, and that's where it went from the parallel to similar, and then we had perfect fourth to perfect fourth, and so it went back to being parallel again. And so the instantaneous motion would say that it went from parallel, parallel, similar, parallel, parallel. But when we look at the whole thing, parallel, the definition of that is it has to be exactly the same every single time. It cannot change. And so if I look at the whole thing, the average motion has to say that it has to be similar. And you go, well, wait a minute, there's more parallels than there are similar. But it breaks the cardinal rule of parallel, which is you cannot have voices that are changing distances. They have to be the same distance every single time. And so if you even have one voice at one particular instance that changes a distance, then you have similar motion. Now, this is going to be really important when we look at the next video, when we start talking about things like the micro versus the macro voice leading, which is what we're going to do in our next music theory video lesson. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoy what we do, just go ahead and take a moment to hit that subscribe button for us so that we can go ahead and continue to produce more great content for you.